certain way people that kill people behave. And there's certain things you look for. It's not all telltale, but sometimes you just get a feeling. Running from the police from a murder. When they finally get arrested, they're brought down to the homicide office and they get stuck in the box, which is the interview room. They have a tendency to kind of just ball up and just feel like they're done. It's a sense of relief. And he's crying, or she is crying.
What are you doing, man?
The emotion is spilling out of him.
I didn't kill her.
You might need to give that thing another look.
You put me in the box and I know I didn't do anything. I'm banging on the door one time.
Hello guys, welcome to Chasing a Murder Talking News. And guys, I want to ask you, please subscribe right now. Hit the like button. That helps support this channel. So I appreciate that so much, guys. And also hit that notification bell if you would like notifications whenever we have new uploads. So right now, we're back on the Lori Vallow case. And we are on part 7 of connecting the dots. I've gotten several messages, and a few of those I'm going to try to address in this video. So there'll be a few additions. So as I mentioned, we're back on a Lori Vallow case, and we are learning that this mother, wife, and faithful Mormon has had questionable mental issues documented since her third husband, Joseph Ryan. That is Tylee Ryan's father. During their quick divorce and long drawn-out custody battle over their daughter, Tylee Ryan, we learned that there were some very serious red flags popping up from both sides. Lori Ryan, at the time, claimed that her ex-estranged husband, Joseph Ryan, was committing a very serious acts against his children and her children. She claimed that he had touched them inappropriately. While on the other side, Joseph Ryan claimed that Lori was displaying mental illness concerns after threatening to kill herself if Joseph gained custody of their daughter, Tylee Ryan. During that crazy battle between Joseph and Lori, and it went on for years, Ryan describes that Lori will do anything to deny me access to my daughter. He's even gone a year without seeing Tylee. And that's after he has spent buku bucks, and I mean a lot of money, on this custody battle. So far, I've been looking for pictures available of Tylee with her mother, but I've come up surprisingly short. We did find, however, photographs of Tylee gleefully posing with her father and family photos. There's many of those. Strange considering Tylee was with her mother most times. Also, while looking for a little bit of background on these guys, I found out that Lori had actually violated court orders in order to keep Tylee in her care and away from Joseph Ryan. During their divorce and after, Lori really never held a job, but it seems she always lives a good lifestyle somehow. So we also learned that Lori goes through marriages like models showing bathing suits in a Victoria's Secret event. It is beautiful, fits for a while, costly, but there's always a new, better choice soon to come. Lori has been married a total of 5 times. That's a lot of marriages. And this is strange because she considers divorce kind of sinful. She doesn't like to get divorces, and she always seems to find reasons why she needs to leave these men, which makes her life look a little bit dramatic. These men of her life suddenly are abusive, or they are causing her trouble. And so people are trying to figure out what is really the truth on this. Maybe so. Maybe she has both trouble from men and she's troubled. After all, Lori's mother says that Lori has had bad choices of partners and that Lori has been through a lot. If you hear from her mother, Lori is always addressed as a victim, something that we're very familiar with whenever we see someone speak for Lori or about Lori. So this kind of seems important in the story, and this is because Lori seems to run with this idea as well. Lori is always a victim, but not once has the people that she accused, which husband 3 and 4, have they ever displayed any sort of record, questionable abuse that was absolutely proven. So it's absolute truth that they were stamped with something wrong with them, or that they had hurt anybody else. There hasn't been any direct threats to Lori from any of these 5 marriages. But what it seems like instead, the men in her life are being dragged through the mud by Lori. They seem to be holding on for dear life while screaming for help for her, not them. And there's a few things I want to go over before we get started. So Charles, Lori's 4th husband, his main concern at the end of his life was Lori's well-being. Of course, JJ's, but a lot of it was based on Lori. He went above and beyond trying to get her help for what and he believed that she needed immediate attention. But while Charles is dragged through that mud, the people involved seem to help drag him a bit further. They ignore his pleas. We even witnessed one of the police cameras where police went out to talk with Charles about one incident. He's begging and pleading for them to help him, that he has concerns. And one of them even said, I haven't had time to read this, or I couldn't, it wasn't legible. So they're not even knowing, not even caring what's going on with Charles and his concern for his safety and his kids' safety. So that was a red flag. It was a really unfortunate situation. Now, something I want to clear up is Charles' Inn may have been set up, and I'm going to tell you and share as to why I believe this. And this is based on facts, guys, that we have. So we know that Lori, after telling Charles when he filed for divorce that she wants to work things out with him, he rents a house in Arizona for her. This is after the fact that Charles had caught her trying to change life insurance policy, passwords, etc. At least he is accusing Lori of this. That is something you need to keep in your mind right now because of what you'll hear later. We all know that Charles gives Lori a second chance. This is after he's already moved to Texas and back and are living in Texas. It's just crazy. But there comes a point where something changes Charles' mind about working things out with Lori. He realizes something isn't going to work. And he calls his landlord and lets the landlord know that he needs to talk to him about a few things because things aren't working out between he and Lori. Lori had actually called Charles as well and asked him if he could come to her home that he rented, and take JJ to school. According to Summer, Lori tells family members that she's worried about Charles hurting her. And so according to Summer, she suggests that Alex Cox, Lori and Summer's brother, should go stay with Lori while Charles comes to the home. But we don't know what they tell him, why he's coming. I mean, if she ever tells him that he's picking up JJ or not. Now, if you remember, guys, it's not that long ago that Charles has been begging and pleading with police, and that he had told police that, quote, she is psychologically gone. Something happened to her, end quote. Charles heads to the home again, like I said, in July 2019, thinking that he's going to pick up JJ and then later have a meeting with the landlord to make arrangements on the house. If you know what we know now, It seems like a setup because Alex Cox, Lori's brother, is there, and supposedly an altercation arose, and Charles never makes it to that appointment with his landlord. This is because Lori and Alex claims that Charles got violent and attacked Alex with a bat, and so Alex shot him in self-defense, so he claims. We learned that Charles was aware that Lori owned a gun. He had mentioned it prior to this, but according to investigators, or what we know at this time, that is not the gun that he is shot with. He's actually shot with a gun that belongs to Lori's brother, Alex Cox. So I want to go over a brief summary. Alex has a gun of his own, and he had to run to his bedroom in the back of the house and grab it, then come back to the living room where Charles was supposedly standing at the time and who was violent and shot him. Now let's jump back a little bit. Now remember, Lori was caught allegedly changing Charles' life insurance to benefit her and changing the passwords. So he had to beef up the security, which leads me here. Lori had Charles' phone right before he was shot. And so maybe that's why Lori has Charles' phone. According to Lori, the altercation actually grew, and the violence grew based on the fact that she wouldn't give Charles his phone back. Now, if you know Lori, which I do by now, most of everything she says is truthful, but it implies the opposite to it. Now, what's interesting here is Lori was not there when the police arrived, and neither were the children. But supposedly, the children might have been inside the house when this happened, and maybe even Lori. I don't have the affidavit on this, but what's important is looking over what Alex Cox says happened and how it happened. So how did Alex have time to get to his room, then back to the living room, if Charles was in a violent rage and trying to hurt him? It's really interesting. If you think about it, if Charles was attacking Alex like Alex said, wouldn't Charles follow Alex? If so, the shooting might have happened in a way to suggest that there was actually a threat. But so far, we've never learned if a residue test was done to determine if the story ever lined up, or any investigation evidence, anything on this. We just never got anything. It seems simple to determine, but because police never treated it like an investigation in the first place, it makes it very difficult to know what happened. Regardless, police call it a self-defense act, which makes absolutely no sense. You must remember that Charles has never once been in trouble for anything remotely violent. People that know Charles find it unbelievable that he would ever raise his hand to anyone, much less the people in his life. So it kind of seems like a setup, and I want you to pay attention. This is very important information. I'm going to try to sum it up a little bit better because I could go into so much detail into this. So according to Lori, she told Charles before he passed away, no one would care if he died. Though we are not certain who the people are she is referring to. Is it the police? Is it friends, family? Who wouldn't care if Charles' life was ended? It is suspicious to me, and if Lori set this up, this wouldn't be the first. So we know for a fact that Lori had set up her third husband, Joseph Ryan, as well. And this is years before Charles was shot. And I'll try to break this down quickly as possible. So she asked Joseph, her third husband, the father of Tylee Ryan, to meet her and exchange Tylee in a public place in Austin, Texas. It seems that Lori actually persuades him to meet up with her using the children. Just like Charles, she used JJ. Now she's using Tylee. So what's important about this is Lori knows what's about to happen, allegedly, okay? Yet her kids are there. This great mother knows what she's about to do and what's about to happen, but she brings her child along. She has no intentions of giving Tylee up. When Joseph Ryan arrives, guess who else is there waiting too? Lori's brother, Alex Cox, Lori's protector, and he has a taser gun. Alex chases Joseph down, and he zaps him in his manly parts, sending him to the hospital. Alex Cox is arrested, and while behind bars, writes letters. Allegedly, it seems that he's kind of making, trying to get people to help him locate Joseph Ryan. But he's using names that don't really match up to the people he's referring to. A year later, Alex Cox pleads guilty to second-degree aggravated assault against Joseph Ryan. And he spends, he serves 3 months in jail, and then he's released. For those of you that don't know, Lori's brother Alex Cox is a truck driver, and he's also a comedian on the side. And if you watch one of his shows, he's actually pretty brilliant at stand-up comedy. I thought he did an absolute wonderful job. But in one of his shows, he actually talks about this incident and makes a joke out of it. But Alex Cox says he does it because his brother-in-law was molesting the children, which leads us to the next thing. Actually, let's go back here. Let's remember that after Joseph Ryan goes through this attack, his aggressive custody battle kind of starts to slow down, and he avoids the Cox family altogether the best he could. He later ends up picking up where he left off, but meanwhile, he's just scared to death. He ended up suing Alex Cox over this. But something I want to go over as well. If you remember, Melanie Boudreaux, Lori Vallow's niece, mentioned her father too was dealing with mental issues connected to his wife Stacy Cox and their entire family. In an interview when they eaten, Melanie Boudreaux tells us that she just suddenly took his daughter, which is Melanie, and left her sick mother alone. According to Melanie, they stayed in hotels for months. This makes us wonder why that is. Was he afraid? And what was he afraid of? Looking back on Lori's experiences and events in her life, husband 3 and 4 are scared to death. Charles even leaves breadcrumbs with one of his attorneys saying, if something happens to me, it's because of Lori. Long story short, Melanie's mother passes away and Melanie grows up. She grew up and married a man by the name of Brandon Boudreaux. And at some point, just relatively recently, Melanie has 4 children and she seems to have a good marriage, and she starts to get it closer to Lori and Alex Cox. And this is when things start to go bad for her. She demands a divorce suddenly from her husband, Brandon Boudreaux, who was also shot at afterwards. And it is suspected that the person that shot at Brandon was somebody related to Lori Vallow and even other people in that family. Brandon noticed that the vehicle that had the gun coming out the back was actually the vehicle that belonged to the man that just passed away not long ago, and that was Charles Vallow. It was his Jeep. And it's shortly after that Melanie Boudreaux actually packs up and leaves and moves to live beside her Aunt Lori. So yes, Lori Vallow has so many things that are so questionable happening all around her. Referring back to what her mom says, Lori's been through an awful lot. But once you start to figure things out, it just seems that Lori is actually creating a lot of these issues. And they are not happening in the way that she's telling the people that are close to her. If you get on her bad side, she will see to it that you know, and usually through her brother Alex Cox. Now, before we get started back on this timeline, there's a few other things I need to cover with you guys. These things are important. So during Lori's divorce, her kids see a psychiatrist, and this is divorce from her third husband, Joseph Ryan. This is because Lori is claiming that they've been molested, but when psychiatrists and specialists speak to the children, it almost seems that they're kind of coached in what to say. And one thing I did notice with Lori, she finds that the kids are very easy to control at a younger age. At this time, they're not rebellious teenagers with their own minds. So it makes you understand why she is, kind of doing what she's doing and how she's handling things. During this divorce, they tried to investigate into the concerns coming from both sides. So the kids, especially Tylee, so Tylee's getting supervisions with her father. And so they're keeping notes on everything that's happening. And according to documentation, throughout their divorce and conflict, Tylee seems to be resilient, happy about the visits with her father. And that's not all. According to the lawsuit documents involving Lori and Joseph Ryan, they allege that Lori's late brother Alex Cox assaulted Joseph with a gun, and this was over the custody of Tylee. Looking back on Charles Vallow's divorce documents, and these are in February, Charles gives an insight to Lori Vallow's apparent state of mental concerns. So referring back to Joseph Ryan's documents, he ended up having to sue Lori, this is her third husband, guys, for allegedly hiding their daughter. And he didn't see her for almost a year. So you can go check out, I want to make sure I mention this. I haven't seen this in a while, but there's a law and crime reporter named Kathy Russon. So that is Russon. Look her up. So even in current cases with Lori, and even compared to the later cases, Lori is a flight risk. And also with the Joseph Ryan, a social worker reportedly said that Vallow told him that death would be an option before she gave Tylee to her father. In documents that are more current from Charles Vallow, Lori claimed that she was a god. He also stated that Lori Vallow didn't want anything to do with him or JJ, he calls Joshua, because she had a more important mission to carry out. And we've heard this before, but I just want to make sure that I'm leading you guys somewhere. So anyways, Charles says that Lori claimed that she is a god assigned to carry out the work of 144,000 at Christ's second coming, which is in July of 2020. And as you know, that July of 2020 has come and gone, and no signs of a second coming. But what's important to note is that Charles claims that Lori Vallow had become infatuated and at times obsessive about near-death experiences and spiritual visions. And that sounds all too familiar. coming from Chad Daybell. And again, in documents, it states that he tried to get her help, but she refuses to visit a doctor because, quote, they would discover that she is a translated being, end quote. So the divorce documents, which were filed shy of the couple's 13th wedding anniversary, he petitioned for sole custody of Joshua, and this is important, because he didn't think Lori Vallow was mentally stable enough to make decisions for him. And what's even more important is he explains the purpose of the iPad that JJ always has. Charles explained that the iPad was essential to keeping Joshua calm. And this is because of his autism, ADHD. And it also says that JJ prefers a routine, which he never gets once Charles passes away. And a lot of times he never gets in the custody of Lori Vallow. It doesn't seem that she's capable of being this mother that everybody says that she is. Charles even says at one point, quote, Lori has never contacted the father about JJ's well-being or even requested any parenting time with JJ when they separated. Charles is extremely concerned that the mother, Lori, would abandon JJ and take JJ's necessities without even attempting to communicate or see JJ, in quotes. And so that quote can be taken many ways, but it just seems like they're talking about those checks that JJ receives. We learned that Lori says that JJ is hard to handle. She has difficulty dealing with Tylee. And most time it appears that Tylee is just a babysitter for JJ, while Lori does whatever she likes to do, which is usually at the temple. And that's based on what is available to us right now. According to Lori, JJ would kick and scream whenever they go to school, and she would have to get the principal to come get him out of the car and take him to school. So I think it's very important that we note, because this could be one of the motives as to why the kids are no longer here. She's not handling the kids very well. She's not capable of doing so. And it seems to a lot of us that Lori is just struggling. She is stressed out. There's not much concern there. She seems to have her children, but she isn't very good at handling the troubles they bring. She says Tylee is a zombie because she doesn't want to stay home and babysit her brother any longer, because she's hitting that age where she's ready to be independent. And later, Lori claims that JJ is also a zombie. According to Ellsworth, which was Charles' attorney, he says it was clear that Charles Vallow loved his children. He loved both Joshua and Tylee very much, but he couldn't fight for Tylee because biologically she was not his. So what's interesting is there's a very close friend that is by Lori Vallow's side nearly every day up until Charles is shot. And what's interesting about this woman, Melanie Gibb, a former LDS member and suspected to be part of this belief system, she has talked with Lori about everything that's been happening. That's including the kids being turned into zombies. In fact, she was on the phone with Lori when Tylee was called a zombie. Coincidental? She was on the phone with Lori when Charles was called a zombie. Coincidental? And she was on the phone with Lori when JJ was a zombie. Coincidental? Red flags, red flags. So, Melanie Gibb claims that the zombies are who they are because of Chad Daybell. He's the leader. He's the one that tells Lori, and Lori tells everybody else. Melanie and her boyfriend, David Warwick, are involved deeply with Chad and Lori. They're probably some of the closest people besides Alex Cox, Zalima, and Melanie Boudreaux, and maybe later Ian. So again, Melanie Gibb is very, very aware of everything that's happening. She's there when Lori speaks with police. And she knows exactly that Charles has major concerns about these belief systems and for their children. And Melanie is there by Lori's side. And if she was concerned, like she said she was, then why was she not helping Charles? So going into December from November, we know that there's been 3 marriages. They're all involved with the same belief system. According to Melanie Gibb, Lori Daybell was also convinced that the world was going to end in 2019. And as soon as 2019 came to a close, that no one would ever notice Lori marry Chad or notice her 2 missing children, according to Gibb. Lori believed that there was going to be an earthquake that was going to hit so large in Utah by the end of 2019 that people wouldn't notice anything in her personal life going on, says Melanie. Gibb quoted what Lori said. She says, quote, "So when Chad and I get married someday, nobody will notice that we're married because of the earthquake and the different destructions going on," end quote. Could this be why Lori says nobody will care? A quote she made to Charles Vallow. If so, it seems that Lori Vallow absolutely does believe in everything that Chad Daybell's telling her. According to a resource, and I forgot to put where I got this from, so I apologize. So let's say this is allegedly. Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow met technically September 23rd of 2019 through Jason Mal at the temple. I believe that's a mistype, so it's probably 2018. Chad was told around that time by one of the 3, I hope I pronounce this right, Nephites, and I don't know if this is Mathoni, another mistype, that a special woman would come into his life. According to this source, it was at Mesa at a Preparing a People event that Chad and Lori are sealed to one another in a temple where they travel to another upper room, and I guess they're saying spiritually, and Moroni gave Lori to Chad. So they're referring to the time that Lori and Chad got sealed themselves without bishops or anybody behind the back of the clergy inside the temple. And rumor has it that Jason Mal has some part to play in this, so I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. So in December, approximately, Ian is receiving phone calls at work, and it's in the afternoon, from his mother, his ex-wife, with concerns about a woman that he is dating. And so Ian is talking to his mother with accusations that Melanie, his girlfriend, might be in a cult, and so was Lori. And this is quite a bit of time before the story actually blows up. It seems that Brandon Boudreaux at that time is actually, he's linked to the story. He was married to Melanie Boudreaux, attached to the missing kids, Tylee and JJ. He is reaching out to everyone he can. He's trying to warn them of the dangers, and he's trying his best to save lives. And it's even this time period that people are talking about Chad Daybell as the leader of this group of people. On December 1st of 2019, Lori and Chad boarded an American airline flight to Kauai, Hawaii, which is an island, and they find out that JJ and Tylee are not on that flight with them. It wasn't long ago, and it's Thanksgiving, that Chad and Lori were out having a good time hanging out with Chad's family and doing a few other things. Now they're headed on a flight to Hawaii. And this is while investigators and stuff are still reaching out to Lori and Chad, trying to find out about the kids. And now they have an extra concern. They're worried about not only JJ, but they're worried about Tylee Ryan too. Nobody's seen Tylee. Also, in this time frame, investigators are returning back to the property with a warrant, searching those properties. So it's during this time, Charles is gone, and Lori still has money that she is spending like crazy. And it seems that, it could be the kids' money that she's getting monthly. So Tylee has had an inheritance from her deceased father, Joseph Ryan, plus a Social Security check. Then Charles passes away. They don't get the life insurance policy, but they do get the Social Security check for that child as well. So according to Melanie Gibb, Lori was getting Social Security checks for both kids. And she says that Lori was most likely getting one from Tylee after Joe Ryan passed away in April, like I said, and then the one for the special needs for JJ. And so this totals up to about $6,000 a month. And we know that Lori isn't working, even though she claims that she has a new job. The only thing we know about is that she's doing podcasts with this group. However, investigators say that Chad Daybell has gotten quite a lump sum from his wife's death, Tammy Daybell, and that he is, escaping and eluding investigators with that money. So December 2nd of 2019, there's a phone call that comes into Ian. We kind of mentioned a little bit about it earlier. Ian describes in an interview what this day was like for him, and this call come in the afternoon. He says, on Tuesday, December 2nd, I got a call from my mother. She said she had just gotten off the phone with Natalie. That's his ex-wife. When we divorced, Natalie made it a point to cut herself off from my entire family and hadn't spoke to any of them in about 8 months. She had made as little contact with me as possible, but hadn't been unkind since the initial conflict of the divorce. My mother told me she just received a video call from Natalie. Natalie was terrified. Okay, let's pause 1 second. I want to tell you before this part, there's condescending resources of how Brandon come in contact with Natalie. So we'll go over both ways. Ian continues with, Natalie was terrified. She reached out to Brandon through his business and heard his side of things. She'd been told that Melanie was in a cult and that she tried to have him killed. While I didn't and still don't believe that she had anything to do with his attempted murder, I was still terrified at that possibility. Now keep in mind, these are kind of fluctuating in between a few days of December 2nd. Natalie called and we were discussing how to handle this in order to keep our kids safe. She told me she would be going to meet with police. I told her I'd go along and lay out everything as I understand. I saw two possibilities. The first is Melanie is not who I thought she was, and I keep myself and my family out of a dangerous situation. The second is that Melanie has been taken advantage of, and he's going to get her out of the situation and healed. So here's my opinion on that. It seems that he's about to manipulate his wife and police and go with a second choice. Ian is in denial and brainwashing himself, the same way he's probably done it multiple times before when he doesn't want to do the right thing. It just seems that way to me. So he says, when meeting the police, I am intending to share things as I understood. So that's important. So remember, on December 2nd and 3rd, Ian's talking to his ex-wife and he's agreeing to go to the police and speak with police and share what he understands. But also on December 3rd of 2019, Melanie Boudreaux is interrogated for 5 hours. So it's somewhere in that time frame when she returns from Thanksgiving holiday. She's somewhere in this area being interrogated. What's important is Melanie tells Ian, and this is very, very important when you hear her interview, and she says, well, you got to remember where this is coming from. Well, Melanie tells Ian that 2 of the officers are possessed by spirits, dark spirits. 2 of them original disciples of Cain. So she can't manipulate what she says here through Charles, who is now deceased, and his documents. This is something she's saying. And what's even scarier is this next thing I'm about to share. It is said that Natalie's kids are said to be full of light, but that can change, says Melanie. And if you know what we know now, that can almost seem like a threat. And so this is even worse. And this is where I'm trying to figure Ian out. Ian says he is absolutely terrified and asked his ex-wife to take the kids away from him on his weekend to have them. And like Ian, I'm going to give 2 possibilities here as to why he does this. First, he knows that there's an absolute threat to his children. Or 2, he's using this as an excuse not to have his children so he don't have responsibility to spend more time with Melanie, which is a new relationship. In reality, I don't know, but I thought I'd give it a try. So you're going to notice in this time frame, I'm going to use several sources that is out there and available to us, where Ian shares what his version of what happens. So he says, so Brandon contacted my ex-wife, Natalie, which is kind of different from what he said earlier, and basically shared the idea with her that Melanie's in a cult, Lori's in a cult, Chad's a cult leader, and they tried to kill me. They tried to kill Charles. And there's this whole plot. Ian says, I'm hearing this and I'm going, holy crap, what did I get myself into? And so anything that happens, anything I hear from now on, even if it's something I've heard before, I'm looking at it through the lens of this could be a cult, that something weird is going on. And I'm hearing this right after the door gets kicked in by the Rexburg police, and we see a search warrant looking for JJ. So that's key. He says they see a search warrant, and then he refers to it as they're looking for JJ. He also says that he's saying, holy crap, what did I get myself into? When that door was kicked down, he was not married to Melanie. So if he's concerned, he's not very concerned for the fact that he ended up marrying her right after this. And trust me, there's more to uncover as we move forward. It's not easy always to know who's telling the truth and who isn't, but I guarantee you, Ian isn't innocent in all this. It's something Natalie needs to start thinking about. And that's kind of frightening if you were to think about it if it was happening to you. That would be a difficult situation. So according to this source, Natalie, Ian's ex-wife, says there's an email that is obtained from the date of 12/4/2019, a week after Rexburg police questioned Lori Vallow on the whereabouts of JJ Vallow and learning that Tylee Ryan has been missing as well. Again, it says that Natalie contacted associate of Brandon Boudreaux trying to find him. Her ex-husband had just married his ex-wife. According to this email, Natalie says that Melanie Boudreaux told her ex, Ian, that a demon possessed Natalie's body and her spirit came to Melanie in a vision or dream to tell her that. So there you go. You can see where Melanie, like, she's having visions with her children. Ian knows about this. And she's having visions of other people, and she's using this to manipulate, which is saying that she has a power to foresee the reality of what is dangerous to her. In other words, she's manipulating people. And remember when Lori said in a phone call to Melanie that she regrets, well, we hadn't got there yet, but remember this. Lori tells Melanie Gibb on the phone that she regrets teaching her any of the teachings, and this must be one of them. Something to keep an eye on, guys. But anyways, Natalie wrote that she learned that Melanie was interrogated by police for 5 hours, and it was the day prior that she also told Ian that 2 of the officers were possessed with spirits. And those spirits are 2 of the original 12 disciples of Cain. So who are these 12 disciples of Cain? What is the story that they're talking about? Well, I can tell you that I've reached out to several Mormons, and at first I was able to get some information from them, but since that letter's gone out from the church saying not to give any information and not to be involved, no one returns any emails anymore. So I had to search and rely on myself. So it says that Cain, he entered into an unholy covenant with Satan, by which he became known as the master of man, or master of the great secret, and by which he could murder and get gain. So remember when I said opposite day with Lori? They're now accusing these officers of being these followers of Satan. So I guess they consider them dark. But who are the 3 Nephite disciples? Description: 3 of Christ's chosen Nephite disciples referred to in the Book of Mormon. The Lord granted these disciples the same blessing granted to John the Beloved, that they might stay on the earth to bring souls to Christ until the Lord comes again. They were translated, notice that word, so that they would feel no pain and would not die. Christ granted these 3 disciples desire to tarry until his coming. They will never suffer the pangs of death or sorrow. Quite interesting, isn't it, guys? Anyways, according to their teachings, Satan cannot touch the 3 Nephites. So now you got to remember, what is the motive that these kids are missing? So it's really hard to put this in order, because you want to hop around as you're connecting these dots. And this is very important in this case. This plays a huge role, as this religion in general plays a huge role in finding answers. And so it's going to be very tough working around that, I think, through trial. And so what is also important is the fact that Melanie allegedly saying that Natalie's kids' spirits are full of light, and that can change at any moment. So Ian mentioned that he was terrified, and I can imagine that Natalie is as well. And so I would be as well. I mean, this is very concerning statements, and it almost, like I said, seems like a threat, or it is a threat. Natalie writes, quote, "I heard something about a missing person that she may be involved with. I don't know the details on that one," end quote. So again, she mentions that Ian was terrified and asked her to take the kids away on the weekend because he doesn't want them to be around her. He's never done that, ever, she says. Natalie concludes on that email by saying that Ian told her to look up the names Alex Cox and Chad Daybell. So it's very disturbing seeing this stuff, and I'm kind of worried about sharing this part of it, but it's already out there, so I went ahead and shared it. But it is concerning knowing that we know for sure that Melanie Boudreaux is part of this belief system. She's even trying to brainwash Ian, and that Melanie Boudreaux herself has marked 2 officers as dark spirits. And it seems that they're referring to themselves as the Nephites, those disciples which are untouchable by Satan. What I want to do right now is go ahead and end this video here. And so we're going to have a second part to part 7. But we'll just continue to mark them as part 8, part 9, or whatever. But it did start getting too confusing. But definitely let me try to do smaller videos. I think it's easier for me to keep up with, and I can detail the story a little bit better. I can concentrate better and focus on one area. But definitely disturbing knowing what we know now and apply it to what we didn't know then. And boy, do investigators have their work cut out for them, but thank God that they have the FBI helping them out. So definitely this story, I'm doing this in such detail because they're still collecting evidence. There's a lot out there, and I want to see justice for every one of these guys. I really do. So let's keep pushing the story, and don't forget to look at our girls' faces right here, right now. These girls are still missing. Please take time out of your busy day to share at least one of their faces on your social media, especially if you run a group and you have a pretty big channel. Okay guys, it's been almost impossible to get to the part where we can share what people think on this channel, our subscribers, about this particular case. Now, at the very end, my adorable little Leela chewed up my mic. So, I am speaking directly into the phone, so you'll notice that audio change there, because it's going to take ages to get a new mic. Puppies, did I make you feel like you needed one? Does it remind you of the great times that come with a puppy? I got a dose of reality. So here we go. We're going to go on and try to pull this off anyway. So, Karen J., she says, feel that Charles was not taken seriously by police. Maybe his version of events were so bizarre that they took everything with a pinch of salt. Looking back in the reflection, his murder was premeditated, as everything he said actually happened exactly as he said, as per Lori's threats. Unfortunately, the narcissist Lori makes everyone else look crazy in a situation like this. Just a sad, sad story. Not sure how they're going to blame Alex, as he passed away in November. I think it was December, but that's okay. It's hard to keep up with. Everybody was looking for them until their bodies were discovered a few months ago. Lori and Chap refused to cooperate with the police and also did not report them missing. If Alex supposedly hid them somewhere safe, I think a lot of other evidence is still going to be revealed during the trial by the prosecutor. Absolutely, Karen, we can all probably relate to this. The fact that we know that in order to bring these charges, they have to have something there, and we're not seeing all of it. Especially when you look at the witness list, there's a lot of people we haven't heard from, and there's no public evidence or anything saying, what these witnesses are going to bring to the table. A lot of people are absolutely frightened that they are going to place the blame completely on Alex, but so far what I've noticed is that these two have kept their mouths shut. They don't seem to be blaming anyone. So, that's kind of curious. Thanks for sharing, Karen. Next up is Alice. I'm not going to butcher her last name. Here we go, Alice. I feel like Gibb knows more than what she's saying, and the police should have helped Charles by investigation more on Lori, and maybe the kids and Charles will still be alive. Just sad, because if the police did investigate more, who knows? Gibb had already lied to police, so who's to say that she did not know? She definitely is covering her butt. She knows more, and I can feel it. And a lot of us agree with you, Alice. Some of us differ who agree with you that Gibb knows more. And the differences on that one is whether or not she was involved with actually planning the kids' demise. In my personal opinion, I don't see any proof of that. But I do see proof that she did have a lot to do with the definition of zombies, and she's very, very aware of what that word means. No doubt in my mind. I think you are right. If the investigation had gone as it should have, a lot could have been prevented. Thanks for sharing, Alice. Okay, our next person is Kimmy Jean. She says, I wish the laws were different, where they had listened to Charles about Lori possibly hurting him and the children. All these murders could have been avoided. And absolutely, Kimmy, that I think a lot of everybody agrees with that. Especially when you watch that video and how calm Charles is, and he's trying to reach police in a way to where he's trying to say, look, I'm calm, I'm not acting irrational, I just need you to listen. And sadly, that did not happen. He tried to explain to them in a rational way, the best way he knew how, without sounding like a lunatic, that Lori needed mental attention. It's so sad. It's just very sad. Thank you for sharing. Okay, now we have Bonnie Lee. Bonnie says, when the case first came out, people were thinking that this was a group of people getting together for the purpose of killing a spouse for life insurance money. The cult believes would set the believer's mind at ease for justification to do this. Okay, how many of us, when this story first came out, thought it was about insurance money? I mean, we did think that played a major role, and it probably still does, but it's not as significant in the motive in this story as we first believed. I think we'll figure out when that trial comes out. Hopefully they find the motive. I think there's several motives attached to this one. Thank you, Bonnie, for sharing. Okay, Carol Ricker. When asked about Charles and Alex's deaths, if you watched her facial expressions and her eye color change to a darker shade, I would say that would have prompted me to ask a few deeper questions about these deaths. I agree, Carol, there were so many things that she did besides even that would have prompted probably all of us to ask her more questions. And to be honest with you, the person that we're asking the question, he probably was having to hold back. That's what it seemed like to me. Not only that, sometimes they make agreements on what they'll talk about before they get there, but yeah, definitely you could tell that those eyes were they were telling this story. And to be honest with you, I just find it completely creepy at times. So thanks for sharing. Okay, Georgiana Lindsay. I've come to view Melanie Gibb is not the person she portrays herself to be. Let's be honest. She was prepared to lie for Lori and Chad, and only when she realized she was in trouble, she began to exercise damage limitation. I firmly believe that had police not tried to contact Gibb, her compliance with Lori and Chad would have wavered. She is dishonest, untrustworthy. She needs to get a lawyer. Even if she didn't like Tylee and JJ, would that be a reason to go along with what she knew? I think not. I agree with you, and I think many of us do, but there's people out there that absolutely believe that Melanie Gibb is 100% not connected to the darker part in the story. But I really have researched this, and there's things I haven't shared, and so I have this feeling, and I agree with you, that Melanie Gibb does know a lot more, and she's doing what she can to keep her own buns out of trouble. Again, I'm not saying that she would have hurt the children, but she does know more than what she's leading people to believe. Do you remember in court where the defense attorney asked her if the prosecutor was, helping her in any way? And everybody knows that the prosecutor's job is to prepare them for going to trial, how to answer questions and stuff. And she just lied. And everybody in that courtroom, they had to bite their tongue. It was just a very uncomfortable situation. And it was also a point where you knew she was a liar. And so I could talk on this one all day long, because her, the way that she kind of seems to enjoy the spotlight part of it, that bothers me a little bit. And I think it does, other people as well. But yeah, you made a very good point, and I'm going to have to cut this off because I can talk about that forever. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, Pris says, when she was talking to Nate, she said the children were not in this world anymore. And that is true. And that was hard to take in too. And I have a lot of different feelings about that. And I'm not sure. I'm glad that you guys kind of acknowledge that you've seen that. Thank you so much for sharing, Pris. Okay, SJ's meme. I think the whole case is nuts, and so are the dumbbells for believing that they could get away with murders. They're sick and delusional individuals. Justice for JJ and Tylee. Absolutely. They did feel, and they were very confident when reporters and stuff started surrounding them, and the heat started to fuel up. Even when Lori was arrested, she walked into the courtroom with that smirk I don't think any of us will forget, and how she was just casually enjoying the spotlight and the fact that she knew where the kids were and no one else did. Daybell, at times you could catch video of him or pictures of him where you can tell that he enjoyed the spotlight as well. So yeah, they are very sick individuals, and I want to say thanks for sharing. I appreciate it. Okay, this one I can tell Sandra Miller, very, very touched by this case. She has a very long comment, so I'm not going to read it all. Sandra says, I want to make sure that the children are not forgotten and that there is justice for all. Lori and Chad and Alex, I pray, rot in hell. They need to pray and ask for forgiveness. I think they're praying to the wrong Heavenly Father. Our Heavenly Father does not tell you to do the horrible things Lori and Chad, along with Alex and others, did. I know they were taught this evilness when they were very young. However, I don't believe that is an excuse for what they did. There is a lot more to all this than we know. I want to go back to when Chad was arrested, and it was talked about, and he worked digging graves. And at that time, it was also mentioned that Chad might have killed a young girl. Pausing a moment right there with her, I've heard this rumor, but no proof, guys. It was also stated that the excuse me, I'm sorry, guys. It was also stated that the cemetery that he worked at might have put this young girl in one of the graves along with another grave. I really feel he has already gotten away with one murder. So yeah, you can hear the curiosity here where people are fearing, because what is happening with these children is it's so easily done that there's a possibility that maybe there's been something overlooked in the past. And I'm saying maybe there is a possibility of that. We don't know. Hopefully that's not true. But I want to say that is a very deep comment. I appreciate you sharing it. I'm sorry I couldn't read it all. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing, because we're all concerned about, some of the background of Chad Daybell. Okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and call it quits there. I am so sorry I cannot read all the comments. Maybe on another video I'll be able to squeeze in a few more. I want to say thank you so much for sharing how you feel on this case. And even if I don't agree or other people don't agree with you, you have that right to have, to feel however you feel. And there's a possibility that you could be right and they could be wrong, or vice versa. The most important thing is to make sure that we keep this case in the eye so that we can let the investigators know that we are watching and we want to see justice brought to the table. So, guys, please have a good weekend. Thank you so much for supporting this channel. Don't forget to subscribe and like. And if you can, I have a Patreon page. If you can donate, please do, because I put a lot of hours into this. So, guys, I will see you guys soon. Love ya. Take care.